The idea behind the show is simply asking guests what they would tell a stranger on a plane if they were sitting next to them and the stranger asked them for advice.
The scenery is passing very fast, but the seer is constant. The one who's seeing is the same.
Let me appreciate you for asking a question that I haven't been asked after 2,500 or so interviews over the years.
Is you have to drop the ego, which is everyone's greatest obstacle.
In 2008, Grant and I had been married for 4 years. I was pregnant with my first child. The economy was collapsing, and we were on the verge of losing everything financially.
So it's so great to have you here, Simone, and to be on this new show where I don't get as much time as my other show. My other show is more of a long form show. And so with this show, I like to just kind of go for 3 or 4 big questions because I only have 3 or 4 big questions time wise. So Simone, I say that and I kind of give you the heads up because I go in a little bit deeper in the show than the other one and a lot quicker. But I want to ask you first and foremost, maybe I'll ease in with a question about books. Are you a book reader? And if you are, is there a book that's changed your life?
Good question. I used to be a really good book reader, and now I'm a good Audible listener. So, you know what, in 2020, I bought all these amazing books and was like, I'm going to spend all this time now that I'm home and read and do all of this, and soon realized that wasn't actually happening. I like to listen to books. So, gosh, there's quite a few though. Look, I'm going to say one of my friends and co-workers, Dr. Dane here, has written a book called Being You, Changing the World. Absolutely love it. And then probably one of the books that I've listened to recently is Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of fun. I really like how honest he is about his approach to life and living, and he doesn't try and hide anything. So there are 2 books that pop out for me at the moment.
So I'm sure, well, okay, I don't like to say sure. I'm curious but I'm thinking you might believe in synchronicities. If you do, this is pretty wild. So we interviewed Dane earlier today, and
I didn't know that.
No, I know you didn't know that, and so that was earlier today. And the next call I had after that was with a guy named John Tallarico, and John and I were talking, and we were talking about how to reach out, for example, to influencers to get them on your show. And I shared with him a strategy he didn't know, which is that Amazon now publishes upcoming books for more than a year in advance. And I said, so for example, if you wanted to get somebody in your show, the best time to approach them is 6 or 7 months before, because by the time the book's coming out, they probably already lined up all their interviews. And I said, for example, so this is where it gets wild. I only listed one book. I said, for example, if you wanted to reach Matthew McConaughey when he released his book, Green Lights, I swear I have both of these on. Now I have this one on as well, all captured to prove that it's all the case. But how wild is that the 2 books you mentioned are the 2, like I was talking to Dane today and I mentioned Matthew McConaughey as the only book I mentioned in my last call.
There you go. Isn't it funny? We're just like empty vessels, aren't we? It's just like, here we are.
100%. So let me dive in maybe a bit further then. One of the questions that I've asked literally at this point thousands of times, I call it the time machine question. And it's almost as simple as it sounds, which is basically, if you could jump into a time machine and go back and talk to your younger self, give her some life advice based on what you've learned in the years since, what do you think you might tell a younger Simone?
Oh, that's a really good question. And oh my God, I would tell her so much, but probably the first thing I would talk about in such a broader sense is don't worry about other people. Like, stop trying to create your life based on what other people think. God, I did that from such a young age. You know, I'd meet a boy, like a boyfriend or something, and instead of going, is he nice? Is he fun? Is he nurturing? Is he kind? I remember like literally in my head going, I wonder if my friends will like him. And it's like, wow, imagine if you didn't choose from that. Or, you know, anything to do with bodies. It's like being a young girl growing up, it's like, God, the amount of judgments around your body is huge. I mean, the amount of judgments around bodies is huge throughout your whole entire life. And it's taken me a very long time to get to that place of going, you know what if I stopped judging it? And when I stopped judging my body, it started changing. And I did notice though, I stopped judging like the like the size and the weight, etc. of it. And then I noticed I started judging the age, and I went, hang on a second, you can't just pass one baton for the next one. Like, what if you eliminated judgment of your body? So I would definitely talk to my younger self about what would be fun for you to do with your body as well. Because I was quite athletic, but I would always look around and go, well, is anyone else doing this? So sort of checking in with others before actually choosing for me. So I think that would be the key element, is choose for you, no matter what anybody else is choosing around you. If it makes you happy, choose it.
I love that. And so let me ask you this then. I asked you about books that may have changed your life. How about in general, when in your life do you feel that you noticed that you were maybe on your path? And I say this lightly because it's like the definition of success is so different for everybody. I don't want to put one in your mouth, so I'll ask you just what for you was that moment where you went, you know what, I'm on the right path now, or I'm achieving success, or whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah. Okay. I like your question, and I'm going to bring up two aspects here, because one is, I think it was very noticeable for me when I realized what I wanted my path to be.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I was choosing or not at the time was not there. But I was living in London, and I was living in, like, I was doing the backpacker thing, and I was living in a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom with 21 people, no money, doing all of that sort of thing. And to get away from everyone, like to have a moment to myself, I would get on the big red buses, and I would, ride from one end of London to the other. And I used to ride a lot. And I remember this one day, I was riding from one end of London to the other, and I'm looking out the window, and I was sort of wondering, questioning. It's like, where's the happiness in the world? And as we were, going across London, it was, you go through the Pakistani area, the Jewish area, the Black area, the, Asian, the white, all of this, money, no money, like all these like diverse ways that people were living. And I looked out the window and I was like, I don't see anyone that's truly choosing happy. So it's sort of, the amount of money they had in their bank account, or the color of their skin, or the religion they were choosing didn't seem to create this happiness. So I ended up writing this whole big piece on the bus on vulnerability. And I remember at the top, I was writing, like, what would it take to change the world? And what would it take? There was 2 things I asked for. One was, what would it take for people to be more vulnerable with each other? Like little kids, when a little kid sees another kid and they're just like, hi. They didn't care what their name is or anything about them. They're like, you want to play? And if we had that level of vulnerability where we weren't sort of building up these walls with each other as soon as we met. So I spoke about this. And then the second piece was, what could I do and what could I choose that would make people see the planet, like the earth, the trees, the flowers, the birds, the weather, all of it. It's sort of, to me, it felt like people were rushing around and not breathing and receiving why we were here on planet Earth. Like, this is friggin' amazing, this planet. So there were 2 things I asked for. Now, I didn't create them straight away, but I started looking at what could I choose that would allow that to, show up in the world, to actualize in the world. So I did start this business called Good Vibes for You years ago. And I had T-shirts, and I actually used to do merchandise for musicians as well. And I had T-shirts and stickers and magnets and all these things. And I had sayings on them that I had picked up from my travels around the world. I thought, like, maybe they would inspire people to choose something greater. Like, there was one I remember saying, be open to the moments of life, do not be afraid. And I was like, well, what if we could walk around the planet like that? But then I was at this festival, Mind, Body and Spirit Festival, and I had this business, and, and I'm doing all this stuff there and making money, setting up my stall and everything. And I met Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness, who works with Dane. And the way he spoke about life and the way he spoke about everything. And he said to me, you know what, you'd be a lot better off if you were open to receiving. He said, you'd earn more money, you'd have more fun, your business would be more successful. And I just looked at this guy and thought, he's crazy. He has no idea what's going on in my life. I just had this friend of mine who died, and I was like, really upset, and I just wanted the world to stop. I was just like, cranky and frustrated. And then he said this to me. And then I went and saw him. I was so intrigued. And I went and listened to him speak one night. And I listened to him speak, and I sat there and I just went, oh my goodness, this guy's talking about everything I want to create in the world. I had this concept of, like, maybe grabbing people by the shoulders and saying, don't you get it? There's something else, we can choose something different. And the tools and the processes within Access, I went, that. So that was 21 years ago. And here I am working with Access now. So I would say the pivotal moment is when I realized I actually wanted to create something different in the world, and I wanted to create my life in a different way. And then the second part would be when I heard Gary Douglas talk, and I was like, that.
I love that. And so maybe I'll follow up with that question before I ask you the kind of the main question that was this whole show was built around. But I know you help people with abundance, with help people getting out of debt, helping creating wealth in their life. So another word, again, this is probably an unfair question, but at the same time, I think it may be a telling question, which is if you could, there's so much. We go to stores and we want to read about financial wealth and what have you, and it's just like 1,000 magazines and they all say the opposite thing as each other. And I think sometimes with just like with weight loss and everything else, it gets overwhelming. So my question out of that, Simone, is if you could tell somebody one thing, like if you could just say this is whether, and to be a fair question, whether it's just here's where you start or here's the one thing that will change everything for you, like what do you think the one thing is that you would tell people?
It's probably going to be frustrating to people that listen, but I would say choice. You have choice. Like you mentioned weight loss, you have choice. You mentioned money, you have choice. People always look at this thing of going, oh, I'll be happy when I have. No, it doesn't work like that. You wake up and you can choose to be happy or not. The amount of money you have in your life is the amount of money that you're choosing. Mm-hmm. So if you don't like your financial reality, then start asking yourself what else you can choose, like you can choose in order to change it. And it could just be your point of view. Like, a choice has got a billion different ways to go. It doesn't have to be, oh, you have to go off and work harder or you have to do X, Y, Z. Maybe it's not about doing. Maybe it's about what can you be? Like, how many judgments do you have about money? That's one thing I realized. Like, you mentioned getting out of debt, because the second book I wrote is called Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, which people go joyfully. And I'm like, yeah, why not? But I refused money for a really long time. Like I, had this point of view. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to change the way people were with each other. And within that, I was like, and I don't need money. Like I refuse money sort of thing, which wasn't helping me. And at one stage I had to go home and move back in with my parents because I had no money. And I remember sitting there going, this isn't working. I need to choose something different here. So it's like every choice you make creates. So what if every choice you made created something greater, including your finances? And start asking yourself, what judgment do you have of money that if you didn't have that judgment could change your entire financial reality?
I love it. So I asked you the time machine question. This question, I think some people could view it as similar. I think they're completely different questions, which I can give context to that. But ultimately, the question is, if you were on a plane, and what inspired this is I wrote a parable book that I'm just finishing now, getting some feedback before we put the final touches on it. And in the book, the short version is that it's two passengers on a plane. One person's giving life advice to the other one. And so it made me start thinking, I wonder what kind of advice all the people that I'm talking to on a regular basis would give to a stranger on a plane. So that's to set up the question. But the question really is, stranger on a plane leans over, says, Simone, whether they know you or not. So I'll just say, it says, Simone, I need some advice. What do you got? My question is, what do you think you might tell them?
I would ask them, are you choosing your life for you? Like, are you choosing your life for you? Are you choosing what makes you happy? And look, I think if you start to have a look at your entire life and ask yourself that question, are you choosing for you or are you choosing for someone else? 2020, I think, had a lot of gifts in it. And for me, one of the gifts was, for the past 17 years, I was traveling 10 months of the year. And all of a sudden, 2020, I'm at home sitting in my lounge room going, oh, okay, now what? Because I was so busy. My life was full. And then I looked at it and went, well, okay, my life is full. Is it what I would like it to be? And I wrote down all these different topics, and I wrote down business, money, relationships, sex, body, geographical. And I live across the road from the beach, and I started walking on the beach every day and asking myself, what is it you'd like to create with business? What is it you'd like with money? What is it you'd like with relationships? I just split up this relationship. So it was like, do I want another one or not? Or if I did, what would that look like? Sex, because so many people put relationships and sex together, and it's not. Sex is sex, relationship is relationship. Same thing as business and money. They put that together. But no, money's money, business is business, you know. And then my body, what would I like to create with my body? And then geographical, I was like, well, do I actually want to be in Australia, or would I like to be somewhere else? So, and I didn't tell anyone. And I really started asking myself questions. And just when something pinged, I would write it down. And then I looked at it all and was like, okay, am I choosing what makes me happy? So am I choosing my life for me, or am I choosing my life for others? So that would be my question to someone on a plane.
That's a powerful question. So my last question, which is the unofficial one, but maybe the most important, which is simply, I mean, in a short interview like this, 15 minutes, there's never enough time. So I mean, I'm one of those people long form. I love long form conversations, so it's been a challenge for me. But let me ask you, and I'll call it a to be continued with your permission, because I think we should bring you on my long form show at some point, because I think you'd be an amazing fit there as well. But Simone, in the interim, for those that might be listening and say, I like what she's talking about, I want to learn more, or I wonder if she has any online or in-person events or anything I can attend, or any of that stuff. How can I get her books? All that kind of stuff that they might ask. Is there kind of one central place or hub where you would send people?
Yes. I mean, we were talking about my name prior to starting here, and I have the perfect name because there is no other Simone Milasas. So if you literally Google Simone Milasas, that's my Instagram, that's my Facebook, that's my website, that's everything. So it's really easy.
Amazing. So Simone, this has been an absolute pleasure. First of all, thank you so much. And like I say, with your permission, I'll call it a to be continued. And I'll also say till next time. So thank you so much for bringing so much magic today.
Thank you for having me. And I would love to come on one of your long form shows. Thank you.